Is over rigid transformations, this time reflections. So we did translations already, now we're moving on to a reflection. So a reflection is an object that is the flip of something. So it has flipped over a line. In fact, I like that in the word reflection there's an FL right next to each other because that makes me remember the word flip. It has flipped over something. And what it flips over is actually called the line of reflection, and it doesn't change its shape or size. So if it's a triangle, it doesn't stretch into a circle. And if it's a tiny triangle, it doesn't become a large triangle. It stays the exact same size, it just flips over the line of reflection. Okay, to draw a reflection on a coordinate plane, just draw each point of the pre-image. This was a vocabulary word on our previous video. On the pre-image, you will draw it first, and then you flip it to the opposite side of the line of reflection. Okay, making sure to draw them in the same distance away from the line as its pre-image. So it's probably wordy, but we'll get into examples and you'll understand what we mean by that. In 8th grade math, we will focus on reflecting an image across just the X or Y axis. When you get into high school, you will flip it across more lines than just the X or Y axis. But for our purposes, we're just going to flip over the axes. To do that, we can use this notation below. If it reflects across the x-axis, this is kind of weird. The original xy will now be x and then opposite y. So if y was 2, it will become -2. If y was already -4, it will become +4. So this little negative in front of it just means it's going to become the opposite. Okay? If it's a reflection across the y-axis, then y actually stays the same and x becomes opposite. So opposite x. So for example, if this was 2, 3, it would be -2, 3. Okay, y stays the same. X is the only one that becomes opposite. When it's a reflection across the x-axis, x stays the same, y is the only one that becomes opposite. Okay? All right, let's try a few, and I think you'll be able to catch on. All right, a reflection across the x-axis. Let's make sure you guys know which one the x-axis is, first of all. I would go ahead and darken in or highlighter your x-axis to make sure you know what you're flipping over. So this shape is just going to get picked up and flipped over the x-axis. So if it's kind of way at the top, when it flips over, it's going to be way at the bottom. That's kind of how to check. Okay, so M is, let's look at our highlighted or our darkened area. M is on this line. It's going to flip from way up here to way down here, but we're going to stay on this line. Let's see how many away it is from our center, from our x-axis. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 above. So we need to flip it to 5 below. 5 below. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now M prime, don't forget to mark it as prime so we know it's the shape after you have moved it, after you have flipped it, is down here. Okay, let's go back to that same line because W is actually on that same line. It is above the line, above the x-axis by 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're going to go below it by 1, 2, 3, 4 and call that W prime. All right, let's go to the D. D is on this line. So we want to see that it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 above the x-axis. So on this same line, we're going to move it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 below the x-axis. Call that D prime. We're almost done. The last one is way over here, A. It's on this line. So it is 1, 2, 3 above the x-axis. So you're going to move it 1, 2, 3 below the x-axis. And we're going to call it A prime. Now when I connect these, again, just do the best you can. it should look exactly like this shape has been picked up and flipped upside down to down here, right over this as our line of reflection. And I think it does look like it did that. So we did a good job there. Okay. For number 2, we are going to reflect across the y-axis. So let's darken in or highlight or whatever you want to do your y-axis so that you're sure which one we're flipping over. There's nothing worse than thinking you're doing it right, but you end up flipping it over the wrong axis. So be sure you know which one you're flipping it over. All right, let's look at where S is in relation to our line of reflection. S is 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right of it. So if we flip it, it's going to end up being 4 to the left of it. So go to the same line and go 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left and call it S prime. Let's do the A. A is 3 away from our line of reflection to the right, so we're going to move it 3 to the left. So drop your A right there and call it A prime. All right, let's go to J. J is 1, 2, 3, 4 to the right, so we're going to move it 1, 2, 3, 4 to the left and call it J prime. And then the last one is T. T is all the way over here. It's 5 to the right. So we need to go 5 to the left on that same line. Call it T prime, and then let's go ahead and connect it. This is another weird shape. So it's okay if your lines aren't perfectly straight. You should be able to tell that you did it right based on the fact that it should have flipped completely over. Looks good. Okay, number 3 is back to a reflection across the x-axis again. So this one's going to get a little tricky because here's your x-axis. And if we were to pick up this shape and flip it over the x-axis, it's actually going to land kind of just right on top of itself because we're not flipping it over the y-axis. You're not flipping it from here over to here. You're flipping it over this line. You're taking it, if it was cut out piece of paper, and flipping it over itself, basically. So this is tricky, so stay with me here and rewind it or slow it down if you need to watch it again. Always look at where each of your dots is in relation to the highlighted, to your line of reflection. So S is one above. So I'm going to put it one below and call it S prime. Okay, W is 1, 2, 3 above this orange line. So I need to put it 1, 2, 3 below it. Don't forget to use prime notation. P is 2 below the line right now. So I need to move it to 2 above the line and call it P prime. And then I is 1 below, so we're going to move it to 1 above. All right, connect it. And it should look like we just picked it up and flipped it the other direction because it's a flip across the x-axis. All right, last one. We are this time reflecting across the y-axis again. So make yourself a mark, a darkened line or a highlighted color, whatever, on the y-axis so that you're sure you're flipping it the right way. And you're just going to flip it across the y-axis. So again, we're going to pick it up and this time just flip it right over. It's just flipping over itself, basically. Okay, let's start with I. I, in relation to my highlighted line, is 2 to the left. So I'm going to drop my new one 2 to the right. All right, L. L is way over here. It's 3 to the right. So I'm going to drop it 3 to the left. L prime. Don't forget to use prime notation. B down here is 2 to the left, so I'm going to move it 2 to the right and call it B prime. And then let's check out W. W is right on the line of reflection. So if anything is ever on the line of reflection and it reflects over itself where it's at, it's going to actually stay put. So we do still label it W prime. It's just that they're both labeled on the same dot. All right, connect your dots. And it should be a picture that has just been flipped over itself. Okay, that is reflections.